Right, good evening everybody. Welcome along to this evening's Rushcliffe Borough Council Planning Committee meeting. I'd like to remind everyone that the meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the Council's YouTube channel. A recording of the meeting will be available afterwards on the Council's YouTube channel. In addition, under the Local Authorities, Executive Arrangements, Meetings and Access to Information England, Regulations 2012, other people may film, record, post on social media or blog from this meeting. The use of any such images or sound recordings is not under the Council's control. May I remind councillors to please switch your microphones off when you are not speaking and switch them on when you are speaking. So good evening everyone. Just for we have some members of the public here, so just so you know, I'm Councillor Richard Butler, the chairman of the committee, and with me on here is Councillor Rex Walker, the vice chairman, and also we have Mrs. Knott, who is a service manager for planning, Mr. Sharman, team leader, Ms. Pearson, area planning officer, Mr. Bridges, area planning officer, Mr. Elliott, senior planning officer, and Mrs. Walker, the borough solicitor. So we go into the agenda. The first item is we have apologies for absence, please.
We have apologies for absence from Councillor Edavine, and Councillor Brown is substituting.
Thank you. And do we have any declarations of interest? I do need to register a declaration of interest in the application for 1 Althorpe Road, Copgrave. The reason for that is because I'm one of the ward members, and also I have also stated what my position is on that application. So I'll withdraw from the item on this, from the meeting for that item. And Councillor Ellis, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'll not take part in the discussions or the vote for the same reasons as you've given.
Okay, thank you very much. So we have the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 20th of June. Those of us who were here, are we happy that those are accurate? So thank you. So I'll sign those. What's the date? Is it there? Right, so we now go into the main reason we're here this evening, and that is to discuss and decide on tonight's planning applications. Before we go into the first item, can I just check that we've all received the late representations that came through today? So we've all received and read those. Okay, thank you. So the first application is 14 Barry Close, Radcliffe-on-Trent, and who's yes, you'll be leading. Yes, leading us through this one. So thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. So I'm going to discuss with you or lay out the application for 14 Barry Close at Radcliffe-on-Trent. This is a 2-storey, 4-bedroom detached family dwelling located on a cul-de-sac close to the junction with Flowers Avenue. It's within the Prince's Place residential development off Shelford Road, and it's to the southwest of Radcliffe-on-Trent town centre. It's the site location plan. You can see that Prince's Close development is still being built out. The property has a fenced rear garden. It has 2 tandem parking spaces to the side. It also has a detached garage, albeit at the moment the detached garage has been converted into a playroom. There are no external alterations proposed to the dwelling, so the property would retain its appearance as a residential property, as it does at the moment. I'll just talk you through some photographs. So this is the property that's before us. As I say, 2-storey, 4-bed family dwelling with the detached garage to the side. This is more of a street view with the neighbouring properties and the neighbouring property towards Flowers Avenue. The rear garden, as you can see, is fenced, and you can see the detached garage there that's been converted to the playroom. Again, rear garden shot. So there is amenity space, there's a decked area, and you can see the adjoining properties to the rear and to the sides. This is a view of Barry Close looking from Flowers Avenue. You can see the just to the right-hand side, you can see the application property. Again, these are sort of neighbouring properties and the style of the development that is surrounding the site. Looking down towards Flowers Avenue, and again, more of a view into the cul-de-sac. And again, Flowers Avenue. So just to talk you through the proposal is to change the use of the residential property, which is a C3 dwelling, to a C2 children's home. There will be 2 children residing there. They will be between the ages of 8 and 17 years of age, and there will be 2 carers providing one-to-one care. Carers will be working 24-hour shifts, which would go from 10 a.m. in the morning to 10 a.m. the following morning. There would be a manager visiting the site. That would be up to 4 days a week, and social workers would visit the site more or less every 6 weeks. Any other visitors would need to be booking their visit in advance. Again, no external alterations to the building. There would be the 2 tandem parking spaces, and it is proposed to convert the garage back to a garage. So it won't no longer be a playroom and or office, it would be a garage, which will provide the 3rd parking space. If I draw your attention to the site history, you'll see that there has been a certificate of lawful use proposed submitted in 2024. And this established that the proposal for the children's home was a material change of use of the dwelling. And therefore, this formal planning application is before you this evening. There have been a number of objections received. The main concerns that have been raised to the proposal relate to the appropriateness of the location of the site and the proposed use of the property, and impact on the character of the immediate and wider area and the village. Again, concerns have been raised about increased levels of traffic and on-street parking arising from the use in terms of the staff and visitors, and that the resultant highway and pedestrian safety issues. Concerns have been raised about impact on residential amenity of the local residents and the local community, and on the actual management of the home in terms of staff and site security. These and other concerns that have been raised are detailed on page 9 and 10 of your agenda, and in the late items document that was consulted with you. Turning to the principle of the development, the proposal, in assessing the proposal, the principle of it is considered acceptable, given the location of the site within an existing residential area, with access to facilities and services in the town centre and open space. It is noted that there will be appropriate quantum of open space provision as part of the Prince's Place development as a whole. In terms of impact on the character, given that there are no external alterations to the property, and bearing in mind the scale of the proposal in terms of the number of children and the staff that would reside there, and the associated levels of activity, the occupation as a children's home is not considered to be significantly different to the occupation of a family 4-bedroom dwelling, with appropriate levels of amenity space provided. Condition 3 of the committee report before you, as you can see, would restrict the number and ages of children to safeguard this. In terms of impact on amenity and the living conditions, we've received a number of concerns, particularly in terms of the impact on amenity in terms of noise, levels of activity, potential antisocial behaviour. However, given the number of children, which as previously noted, we can control by condition, and the staff residing at the property, the proposal is considered to not be of a significant scale. Shift changes are only once a day. From the details provided, the number of visitors to the site would not be significant and are considered to not be significantly greater than a family of 4 living at the property. The education of the children and the therapy sessions would be undertaken off-site. Again, the number of journeys and the levels of activities would not be considered to be so different to that of a family dwelling with children residing at the property. The police authority have been consulted and have reviewed the application, and they've raised no objections. The applicant has confirmed that secure by design principles would also be implemented. Environmental Health have also reviewed the application and have raised no environmental health concerns. Now, the home will be registered with and regulated by Ofsted and will be subject to the Children's Homes England's regulations. So there will be some regulatory bodies that will be involved. I would note that the demographic of the resident children is not a planning consideration in determining the application. Another major concern that has been raised is that of highway matters. The Highway Authority have reviewed the application and the details submitted and have raised no objections to the proposal in terms of traffic levels, parking provision and highways and pedestrian safety. Again, given the number of children on the site and the number of visitors. There may be some increase in journeys, it's accepted, but these are not considered to be so significantly greater than the occupation of a 4-bedroom family dwelling, or to be at a level significant enough to justify refusal on these grounds. It's therefore considered that there are appropriate off-street parking spaces provided to serve the children's home. As I say, there would be 3 off-street parking spaces, which would accord with highway standing advice. Other concerns raised in relation to the operation of a commercial business from the site are not a material planning consideration, and concerns have been raised or suggestions have been made that we look at other activities at other children's homes. Again, this is not a matter for this application. We have to assess any application purely on its own merit and its own site circumstances. So in conclusion, for the reasons set out in the report before you and considerations set out in the late items document that has been circulated, it remains that the recommendation is to grant permission subject to the conditions set out on pages 16 and 18 of your agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Pearson. We have 2 guest speakers for this item, so now's the time to hear from them. The first is Mr. Bird. If you'd like to come and sit at that chair there, please. And just so everyone knows, you have up to 5 minutes to address the committee. If you're still speaking at 4.5 minutes, we'll tell you there's 30 seconds left. And then if we hit 5 minutes, we have to ask you to stop. So as soon as you're ready, if you press the right button, the red light will come on and you can address us. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, and thanks to your committee and to the committee staff for allowing us the opportunity to address you. My name is Robert Bird. I live at number 9 Barry Close with my wife Jan, who's sitting beside me. Having said that, you will have seen the number of objections that you've received, and also we have a WhatsApp group which again has over 20 people. So though obviously I speak in a personal capacity, so to speak, there are quite a lot of other residents who share our concerns. And I do want to stress the point that the officer made. We're talking about a substitute, it sounds very bureaucratic, doesn't it? Oh, it's just C3 to C2, but we're talking about a substantial change of use, material change of use, from a residential dwelling to, and I checked this in the, in the official document, uses such as a hospital, nursing home, residential school, college or training centre. So first of all, Chair, the first thing that we're obviously very concerned about, which the officer dealt with, the first thing that we just wanted to mention is there's a sort of lack of clarity about the proposals. The officer mentioned the 24-hour shifts, right, how that would work is left up in the air. How the manager would liaise and communicate with residents, and also the ownership and the nature of the business model which is proposed. Our understanding is that they will contract with any social services department to take a placement as necessary. So it wouldn't necessarily be the City Council or the County Council. We're saying that this material change would have a detrimental impact on the amenity of the nearby occupiers. The surrounding area is wholly characterised by single family dwellings, and I must stress this, mostly people with children. As you say, I'm no longer of an age where we have to worry about children, but you can see from my colleagues behind me that many of them have children and they are extremely concerned. Again, the officer has mentioned that what's happened elsewhere is immaterial. But obviously we've done some research and we find out that there are severe problems sometimes associated with these properties. Sometimes only one child can cause havoc, and we had one person saying that the police car was there every other day. So you can understand that though we may be told the problems will be managed, that we'll have access to the manager, behind that lies a real worry about where do we go from here, and how when given that the applicant themselves says that the care staff won't have the opportunity to control children. We did have, for example, we did have a report that a child refused to go to school and there was no way that the carers could make that child go to school. A question of privacy, if you've been to Barry Close, you'll see that all the front gardens do not have fences or hedges, so anybody can walk right up to their window. And my wife and I, we moved into a bungalow on Barry Close. I have to say, we thought this would be our last move. But anyway, our 2 bedrooms front onto Barry Close, which means anybody could walk up and through our bedroom windows, which could make the question of privacy quite an issue. A big thing that we're concerned about is the question of parking, which has been dealt with. We take the points that have been made, but it is a narrow street. And when we're talking about 2 carers, a manager, possible professional visits, social visits, fast food deliveries, we can see there are problems. I myself have observed an occasion when the 2 cars from the existing occupiers were parked outside, when the refuse vehicle couldn't get past.
30 seconds.
Thank you. Couldn't get past. So this is the sort of problems that we could have in terms of parking problems and access for emergency vehicles. Finally, Chair, you also have the ability to reject the application on the basis of policy, as I understand it. Well, I would say, is this the way to provide social care policy for these children? We would suggest that a profit-making model based in a residential like Barry Close is totally inappropriate.
That's your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Could you just press the button? That's it. Yeah, thank you. You just spot on 5 minutes. Sometimes 5 minutes can be a long time or can be very quick. It depends. So, but thank you for that. And our next speaker on this is one of the ward members, Councillor Upton, please. So as soon as you're ready, up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. As stated in the report, I object to this planning application and I would like to expand on the comments I made. I support the general principle of having small children's homes in the community, having in a previous employment been responsible for building maintenance issues at several large, remote and institutionalised children's homes, which in my opinion were anything but a home and have thankfully now closed. But, and it is a but the key issue in this case is that the local planning authorities should give due weight to and be supportive of applications where appropriate. And I don't think, quite frankly, that 14 Barry Close in Radcliffe is appropriate. My objection to this application is principally focused on location with respect to parking and highway safety. I do not agree with the Highway Authority comment that is not anticipated there will be significant highway implication to the change of use. Barry Close is a cul-de-sac off Flower Avenue, which itself is a cul-de-sac off Hallam Drive. It is a relatively narrow road with no on-street parking restrictions, very limited on-street parking, as my photograph illustrates, and 14 Barry Close is also on the bend in the road. There are 2 tandem car parking spaces on the relatively narrow drive, and the proposed conversion of the garage will provide a 3rd. But this would give 3 inline spaces. In my opinion, although this gives 3 off-site car parking spaces, the time and effort involved in reversing and manoeuvring 3 cars parked in line will result in 1 or more of them being parked on the road. And I suggest that this could, or most probably would, happen at this location, with all the associated vehicle and pedestrian and safety hazards as the cars are moved in and out, as shown by the photograph, which demonstrates the current position where 3 cars are parked. And for those that can't see it, some are parked half on the path and half on the road. Now, paragraph 45 of the report states that policy 14 of the LPP2 requires that specialist residential accommodation development should not have significant adverse impact on highway safety, and adequate provision for access and parking is made. I submit that this will not be the case with this proposed change of use. I have a real concern that the proposed change will generate significant additional vehicle movements associated with the staff shift working and visitors, and surely there will be many unplanned visits by a range of professionals in response to various issues. This will have a combined adverse effect on parking on Barry Close. I also have a concern without clear management plan that the way the home operates in the future could change significantly. I commented on my objection about the concerns being raised by residents regarding an alleged covenant prevented commercial to business, etc. I accept this is not a material planning consideration. I won't comment any further on that. One other concern that has arisen that I was not aware of at the time of my objection is the proposed installation of dusk to dawn external lighting. And I do have a real concern about this resulting in harm to the character of the local street scene of Barry Close. So, in conclusion, I object to this application principally because of the specific issues of potential on-street parking, the adverse impact this would have upon the character and the amenity of the neighbouring properties, and highway safety for motorists and pedestrians. I firmly believe that a property with larger grounds with appropriate off-road parking to allow turning within the site and vehicles to exit front-facing back onto the highway should be found. In my opinion, the photograph on the screen says it all, and I urge you to refuse this application. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Upton. Well in 5 minutes, so thank you for that. So we heard from Mr. Bird, who is a resident and neighbour of the property, who raised some concerns that some of which were, most of which were in the report. The issue of material change of use. He's not sure about, or there's lack of clarity on the 24-hour shifts, how they'll work, and also how will liaison with residents work from the management, and also comments about ASB, antisocial behaviour, which we've read in the report, and along with parking issues. And Councillor Upton thinks it's just the wrong location, and such things should be in a more appropriate location, and also picked up on parking and highway concerns, and also the lighting, dawn to dusk lighting. So can we pick up on any of those, please, before we go for debates? Thank you.
Certainly, Chair. I note that Mr. Burns talked about other uses that fall within the use class, which may be permitted development. If you look at your the report, condition 7 of the report removes those permitted development rights, so it restricts the use to being purely for a children's home. Again, that's just to safeguard that we don't get any other uses in the property. With regard to the implementation of the management plan has been reviewed by the police authority, who have considered that it is quite comprehensive. Excuse me. And again, I think it's condition 3, which restricts the number of children, also means that the home would have to be operated in accordance with the details set out in the management plan. So, I note that there's been a number of concerns with regards to highways, and Councillor Upton and Mr Burns certainly raised this as an issue. We've consulted with the Highways Authority. They are our technical advisors, and they have raised no objections for the reasons that we've set out in the report and for the presentation that I've made this evening. So we think that the Highways Authority have raised no objections, and therefore it would be difficult for us to justify refusal on those grounds.
Okay, thank you very much. So I think we picked up on those points. So we can open up for discussion and debate and decision. So does anyone have any comments or questions on this one? We've had quite a detailed both written report and commentary as well, and hearing from our visitors. Councillor Mason.
Okay, thank you. I mean, this is quite a report, and thank you for that. But I do have several questions. I wasn't quite clear who, if there were problems there with noise and with parking, who the residents could contact. I recognise it's a business, and so would it be the owners? I wasn't quite sure in what you said. Is it the owners of the business, or is it the people that are there? Probably not. Or is it to do with the council? Yeah.
I think if you look at the details of the management of the property, I think it is mentioned that local residents would have access to a contact number for the manager or for the staff, so that if there were any issues, that would be their first port of call.
And can you be confident that that would go up the line to the people that run it, own it, and are responsible for it?
I have to say that we couldn't control that, but that is in their management plan, and we have conditioned that they have to operate in accordance with the management plan.
Okay. I have to say that I am quite concerned as well with the parking, because I know in cul-de-sacs it can be quite difficult because people are going up and down the same piece of road. There's no way round it. And just to see those cars parked there. Is there not more parking actually on the site? But I can't, can you just show me the photo again of the front of the house? There's surely a drive on the right-hand side up to the garage. Is that not counted as parking space? And well, there's one car there, isn't? Where was it? Can't it be asked that as many cars as possible park there first instead of on the road? Can that be?
I mean, certainly the whether it's a 4-bedroom family dwelling, sorry, or the children's home with the staff and the manager, potential visitor, it complies with the standing advice of the Highways Authority. Okay. And therefore, you know, the Highway Authority have raised no objection on those terms.
I mean, I can see the point, because if you've got a 4-bedroom property and it's it's what I have. Yes, there can be a few cars that that are there anyway on a private house. So if your kids have got 3 cars, and there could be up to 5 in a 4-bedroomed house that park there all the time, every night or something, I don't know. So it is a difficult one, and I do struggle with this, but I just feel that there are certain special things that should be made that give some protection to the people that live on that. If we were to say accept it, that there was some way of protecting them from whatever was to happen. And I suppose I've been given some reassurance that they, but you hear of cases where people just keep writing and writing. I was hoping that there was somebody, you know, that there wasn't just the local people, but somebody that they could, you know, speak to, and perhaps one of them is their local councillor. So perhaps that would be a way for people to deal with it. I do find it quite, I didn't realise that they put 2 children, only 2 children, in a house of this size with all the people that are doing it. But having said that, and like Councillor Upton, it is a better way of treating children in a caring manner. I will think about it, and I will have a listen to what other people say, and I'll make my decision then. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Mason. It's very helpful, and I think as well, as it says in the conditions, there is reference to the management plan in place. Which hopefully would enable engagement with the staff who are operating the facility, and also regards to the parking. Again, one of the conditions is that the garage has to be reinstated into a garage before it could be a change of use. So hopefully that's some help. Yeah, do you want to come back?
Can I just add as well that we always, for something like this, we always get other areas where something has happened that shouldn't have happened. But it would be nice to hear of some that have been successful, because surely there must be some, and where they are. But yeah, okay, I'll think about it.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I mean, obviously, we can only talk about this particular application and what's in front of us. But that said, I know that it wouldn't be the first time that there has been a change of use like this for the same sort of reasons around. Councillor Ellis.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is a very well prepared report, and it lists all the regulatory reasons why this application should go ahead. It's quite compelling in its arguments, but when I look at it from just an ordinary person's point of view, I would have to agree with the objectors that it is just totally in the wrong place. And I think Councillor Upton made a very, very good point about the so-called 3 off-road parking places. It's a nonsense. And I have had some, if we refer to the highways issue, I've had some 20 years experience of dealing with highways, not in Nottinghamshire, but in Derbyshire as well. And they don't always make the right decisions. And in this case, having seen Councillor Upton's photo, I would say they've clearly made the wrong decision. So I feel very, very uncomfortable with approving this application. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So are you sort of thinking of potential? Okay, fair enough. Righty-ho. Councillor Giorgio.
I've read through this application and I just can't see how a business should be approved on a cul-de-sac. Just reading through it, I just can't see how it is going to work on a cul-de-sac. If it was a street and you've got both directions for cars to come and go, if there is an issue with parking, then you've got two ways to come from it. But it being a cul-de-sac, I just can't see how a business can be considered. Myself, sorry.
It's okay. There's nothing to apologise for. Probably no need to come back on that, but because you're just stating an observation, so that's fine. Councillor Calvert, and then Councillor Thomas, and then Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chairman. I've got a few queries I'd like to ask the planners. First one is paragraph 7 talks about a certificate of lawfulness was refused this February. I'd just like some clarification of how that relates to this particular application. Secondly, a clarification about the manager and how often he or she might visit. I think the report refers to up to 2 days a week, which could be a lot less than 2 days a week, obviously, if it's up to. But I think in your presentation you said 4 days a week. So I'd just like to clarify that, because I think it's quite important to know how often there would be a manager on site, not specifically for the parking issues, but just for the way the whole care would be done. And thirdly, just a query about the sustainable location of the site. The report, when talking about the principle of the development, it talks about currently there are no specific services or facilities within the development, and it also seems to be poorly served by public transport. I think we've got one bus an hour on Shelford Road. To me, this sounds quite remote, actually, and would it be, I can't see how you could describe it as a sustainable location while there is this bereft of services and facilities. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I was wondering who, because I was going to ask that question about the in paragraph 7 about the certificate of lawfulness, what that means. So thank you for asking that. So yes, if we come back on those questions, please.
Yes, certainly. Thanks, Chair. So in terms of the certificate of lawfulness, there's an application that was submitted really just to establish whether a change of use from the residential dwelling C3 to C2 required planning permission, or was it permitted development? Because it relates to the care of children, children can't live on their own as a family, so they have to have the carers. By virtue of the carers, it then moves it into the C2 use, which means it does need planning permission. So the question as to whether permission was required, that was the bit that was refused. And then they had to submit a formal planning application, and that is what's before us. Yeah, that's why we're here. In terms of the manager visits, apologies, I think there may have been a slight error in the report. From the management plan, it is up to 4 times a week. It could be twice a week, it could be every day, it could be 3 times a week. I think it's on a need basis, but there's always contact with the manager available from the carers if there are issues that need to be resolved and the manager's not on site. And then in terms of the sustainable location, if you look at the policy does say these sorts of specialist accommodation should be in residential areas, which it is. Princess Place is certainly not built out yet, and in terms of open space and park facilities, they will be provided as part of the wider housing development, so there will be that facility there. Yes, there is a bus which only runs hourly, but there is a bus that would take people into Rushcliffe-on-Trent and would also allow the carers to perhaps use and the employers to use the bus. And of course, there's the station not too far down the road. I think it's 1.6 kilometres into the centre of the town. So I think it is a sustainable location. It may not be highly sustainable, but it is a sustainable location. and it complies with policy for that reason.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. I've got 2 comments and 3 questions. In terms of it being a sustainable location, I mean, surely it's clearly a sustainable location because it's an allocated site in the local plan. Therefore, by definition, it must be a sustainable location. And I would also comment that tandem car parking spaces are always problematic, but they have been approved, and they've been approved by this council in a residential development like this for this number of cars. The children's home wouldn't have any significantly more car movements than a home with the same number of adults and children living in it. So those are the 2 observations. The 3 questions are: has any consideration been given to having a condition for a travel plan? I know it's not a large employer, but on the other hand, given the concerns about parking, it would be an opportunity to highlight sustainable transport options and to perhaps highlight the requirements for how staff should park and the considerations that they'd need to look at, and also perhaps even identify other, locations within easy walking distance where cars could be parked. So that was one question, really. The other question is, on the picture, though, what is that bit of grass in front of the vegetation? Is that part of the boundary of the house, or is it part of the highways? It just looks to me as though there may be an opportunity there for some off-street parking to be created. And then there was one more thing. The other thing is, I think one of the representations suggested a temporary approval to monitor any issues and so on and so forth. Was that something that officers considered? Thank you.
So travel plan and temporary approval, and what's the degree? I think that's probably part of the front garden, the lawn is, but I'm sure you'll confirm that.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so in terms of the travel plan, yes, we could put a condition on that requires a travel plan which looks at what other opportunities are available for getting to the site. So if staff were to use cycles or buses to try and provide what those options are to staff using the site and getting to the site, that is an option that we could request a travel plan prior to the operation of the use commencing. So that is something to bear in mind if you are minded that way. There's a query over the grass at the front. I believe that will be within the private ownership of the dwelling at the moment. I'm not sure there'd be enough room to get a parking space on there, but we don't have plans to demonstrate it anyway. And we are just looking at the application before us, which is just to use the existing driveway, convert the garage back to provide those free spaces. And then in relation to temporary permission, the application hasn't been applied for on a temporary basis. So it's before you as a permanent, as a request for a change of use for a permanent period of time. I just wanted to respond on a couple of other points as well. There's been reference to business use. The application is a C2, which is a residential institution. It's a residential use in that case. We have a specific policy in the local plan part 2, which covers specialist residential accommodation, policy 14. So it's not a business use technically, it's not a Class E use that looks at retail, but it is a specialist residential accommodation type use covered by policy 14, which does look for the proposals to be located in existing residential areas. And that's the requirement of part A of that policy. And then just in terms of highways as well, just to clarify that we need to look at the material differences between the existing use, which is a use as a C3 dwelling. It's got 4 bedrooms and the potential number of cars, vehicle movements that could propose as part of that, and looking at the difference between that and what is proposed now, which is a C2 use, but limited by conditions to 2 children in there and in accordance with the management details that have been provided. So it's the material differences between those two uses that we need to concentrate on, and whether there would be any significant impact in terms of highways from those uses. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And I think that your clarification there helps answer Councillor George's point about the change of use or business use and regarding the policy in local plan part 2. Do you want to come back, Councillor Thomas?
Yes, I would like to come back. I think from what the officers just said about, you know, the policy to site these residential homes within communities, it does seem to me that this is an excellent opportunity for young people to be located in an area where, you know, obviously, clearly residents are law abiding and would have eyes on it. And it seems a good opportunity for the children, to me, to be located here. I would move the recommendation, asking for the condition that a travel plan is produced. Thank you.
Right, just making a note of that then. So you're moving the recommendation as per the report, but plus request for a travel plan on the condition. Okay. Do you have a seconder at that stage? At this stage for that, Councillor Chaplin? Do you want to add anything, say anything about that?
Yeah, I would like to second that. I really can't see that there's going to be more coming and going under this plan than there would be if, as Councillor Mason said, a family with 2 adult children could have 4 cars that would be coming and going at all times of the day and night. So, yeah, I'm going along with putting forward the recommendation.
Okay, thank you. I'm conscious I've still got 2 other speakers wanting to speak. So Councillor Brown and then Councillor Mallender.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I'd like to think of the children and think moving them into that sort of area would be absolutely great for their social interaction. That's the first point. Secondly, I live on a very similar road to that, a cul-de-sac with about 20 houses, 4 or 5 bedroom detached and bungalows as well. And also just round the corner from a school. Twice a day, that cul-de-sac is full of cars that we can't do anything about. We just have to live with it. And I've got several families on that road that continually park on the road. They've got the kids now with cars. And indeed, I had 2 children with cars. And what I did is, like Councillor Thomas pointed out, the grass on the front, I put paving down, brick block paving. So we could get 5 cars on the drive instead of 3. So that may be an option. I know we can't make a condition. And as far as liaising with the actual people who own the establishment, I know we can't make a recommendation, but I've said this before about it. The problematic, if there are problematic, there probably maybe no problems, is create a residents liaison group with them. 2 or 3 residents have a regular monthly meeting to discuss any problems that might arise. And I can think of other houses in my area where there are problematic kids and it's not a children's home. So my personal view is to go with it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Possibly, I mean, I don't know how this is going to go, but are you suggesting perhaps a condition or an advisory about consideration of a liaison group, for example?
Yeah, as well as the front garden, we can maybe make that a condition that they apply. You know, I know you don't have to get permission to do that. You can do that yourself. They could get they've already got a drop down curb, so it's quite easy to make that off-road parking.
Might be harder to put in as a condition because that would be an effective material planning change, and you never know, maybe at some stage, rather like in a domestic situation, someone might want to put an application in to do that as a separate thing.
I know some new estates like that sometimes have a clause for 10 years or so. You're not allowed to put caravans and things like that on the front. So I don't know how long that estate's been there.
But I understand your point there. Probably no need to come back on any of those points. And did officers want to come back on them? No. So, Councillor Mallender, please.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to say very similar things to Councillor Thomas, actually, which was asking for a travel plan for the staff. If you look it up, it is a bit of a walk from the bus, and about 20-25 minutes, which is quite a walk for people that aren't used to it. It'd be fine for me, but you know. And it is quite a main road, but nevertheless, I still think a travel plan for the staff would be an excellent idea. And also, there is a cycle lane along there, and I believe there is a condition about cycle parking. I'm a bit. I'd like to have seen, which I think is a shame, that we didn't have the applicant here to explain some of the things. It's a bit sad, really, that we haven't had that. So there was some talk about lighting, and I got the impression from the resident that it was going to be on all the time, and well, obviously when it's dark. And I'm wondering, is that really necessary? Not only for the amenity of the children in the home, for whom, you know, darkness is conducive to sleep, but also the people living nearby, and also to wildlife. To have a light on all the time is really not good for wildlife. So I was just wondering whether that was correct. You know, it would have been good if we could have seen a copy of the management plan. And you know, if there were two children there, and they were of the older children, say, and it does say up to 17, it does seem a very small piece of garden for that. And I was going to suggest the opposite to what's just been suggested. I was going to suggest, is it possible, or is there some sort of covenant on this area? Because I know a lot of estates are like that. Is it possible to fence the front garden, or even better, put hedge around it, so that the children could have a little bit of extra play space if they were of younger ones, particularly? But, you know, there are people that live in houses, and there could be, if a family had bought this, they could have a 17 and 20-year-old, or, you know, they could have teenage children who would also not have a very big garden. It wouldn't be my choice, but, you know. There was some months ago, it might be years, you know how time flies, a previous application, I think it was for disabled children, and that had a massively huge garden with lots of facilities in it, and that was one of the appeals, which one of the appeal of the situation, which meant that it was actually accepted. So even though that wasn't in a very accessible place. So yes, I think generally I'd like to go along with this, and I think it is important, and I don't know whether we could put a condition to have a community liaison group set up, because I know from in my own ward, where there is a 14-bed hostel for homeless young people aged 16 to 25, there is a community liaison group that's been running with the organisation that runs that. And I also completely agree with the speaker that it's completely wrong that the private sector is making money out of vulnerable children, and there should be a better way of doing that. But we're in that situation, and that's what we've got. Perhaps it will change. So yeah, the lighting, travel plan, and community liaison group.
Okay, thank you. Well, I think, well, officers will come back on this, but I think paragraph 41 you're referring to, because it does refer to the dusk until dawn lighting and CCTV in there. But then also condition number 5, it also says that the precise details of external lighting and CCTV shall be submitted and approved in writing by the planning authority before any change of use. So hopefully that sort of partially answers your question.
Well, if it's security, it's just going to come on when someone disturbs it, presumably. So I just wanted to check that was the case and not permanently on.
We can get clarification on that, and I think as well, and I'm sure we'll be advised, but the liaison groups, I think, and I've had experience with this, as others have with other applications here, and there are all sorts of applications where you have liaison groups forming. I don't generally think they're a condition, but they can certainly be an advisory or an informative. But we'll take advice on that. So if you come back, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, you covered condition 5 covers the lighting, and that's any external lighting, not just security lighting, that condition covers. And the residents liaison group, yes, as you said, informative notes to the applicant regarding that would be most appropriate in this case. Go ahead, Chair.
Thank you. And Councillor Wells, you've indicated to speak.
Thank you, Chair. I did go and see the property and I spoke to the next door neighbour. He said the parking is a problem there all the time. And as the gentleman speaker said about the refuse collection, they have to knock on the doors to get the cars moved. And one day an ambulance tried to get through and he had to go on 2 wheels on, 2 wheels off, which the driver was not happy at all. The road is not adopted by highways. Pardon? So I'm a bit iffy on this one. Thank you.
Thank you. That's mind you, I suppose it could be said, couldn't it, that as colleagues have said, that in this day and age, despite people being asked not to use cars and all the rest of it, there tend to be more cars than spaces, whatever the household. But anyway, sorry, Councillor Brown.
Just a quick question following the comment about not adopted. Can highways comment on an unadopted road? Okay.
That they can, and could it be? I suspect. Again, I'll bow to professional advice, but that development is still very new, and I would imagine that the roads will be adopted one day. I know that in my particular area, there's a large development with 400 odd houses built 6 or 7 or 8 years ago, but the roads have only just been adopted in the last year. So I think it's a process of adoption. But quite right, it's not adopted at the moment. Do you just want? Does anyone else want to add to that? Come back on that, or nothing? No. So, Councillor Ellis, please.
Thank you, Chair. I find the argument that we've got so many cars in so many unsuitable locations as a justification for making things worse in this area, particularly without logic. Why should we make the residents of this estate suffer when it's not necessary?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Yes, if you'd like to come back on that.
Thank you, Chair. We've discussed it, so I'm not going to go over this too much. But the discussion that we've had about the problem with parking is an existing issue, and the application in front of you has been assessed as not actually significantly changing the parking situation that's there at the moment. So, whilst there's some concerns that parking may not be great, there's no evidence to this application that it would be significantly worse than what it is at the moment. There is 3 parking spaces that were considered acceptable for a 4-bedroom dwelling that could be accommodated by a number of adults and children who all could have vehicles. So in determining if that's acceptable, the bar of what, approval or refusal is it significant, is it harmful, is it severe? So we just need to be mindful when thinking of that. And just if I can go back to the motion, we've obviously got from Councillor Thomas recommendation for a travel plan, but we have talked about an advisory. So just before we get to that vote, can we just clarify and are we happy to delegate it to
Yes.
to officers? Just that clarification, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, thank you for that. So yes, Councillor Thomas, well, we have got to the position now where we've got the recommendation moved and seconded, along with the comment about travel plan. Are you happy for the details of that travel plan to be in effect delegated to officers as has just been described?
I think we need to be clear if it is or isn't. My advice about the parking on site, they've put it in front of us, and officers are content with what's there. So it's I don't advise that it's reasonable to put that advisory on. Just in terms of the advisory on the liaison group, just for clarity, are you expecting the informative to say that we would recommend them looking into a community liaison group if there were issues that needed to be discussed, that kind of, rather than, because an informative, we can't enforce that, we could just recommend it and suggest it. Is that kind of the...
Yeah.
Great, thank you very much.
Okay, so that's fine. So you're recommending the advisory groups should any problems arise. So yeah,
Not should any problems arise, but set it up in case problems arise. Yeah.
Okay, got that. Right. I don't see any other hands going up to speak on this. I think we've had quite a good discussion and points raised on this. Oh, sorry. Yes, I just need to check. Thank you for that, Councillor Chaplin. You seconded the recommendation. Are you happy with the additions in terms of advisories and conditions?
Yep, absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, so yeah, just for the record, that is. Right, okay, colleagues. So I think we need to make a decision on this. We've had a lot of discussion for those both perhaps in favour and those who are perhaps against or have concerns. But we need to make a decision. We've got the application in front of us. It's been moved and seconded along with the advisory and condition details. So show of hands for those in favour of the recommendation. Please show your hands. 1, 2, 3, 8. Anyone against? 1, 2, 3 against. And for the record, any abstention? There won't be any abstentions, no. So, right, okay. So, permission is granted along with the additional conditions and advisories as we have discussed. So, thank you for that. Right, we move on to the next application now. If anybody wishes to leave the room, you feel you can stay or go. So I hope we have had a big discussion on this and we have come to a decision. So thank you. Right, I need to stand down now, don't I? So
yeah.
Yes. So.
Okay, so we move on now to the next application, which is at 1 Althorpe Road, Cotgrave. And I'll hand over to Mr. Bridges to take us through the report.
Thank you, Vice Chair. This presentation relates to land to the rear of the Manor House, 1 Althorpe Road, and an outline application for up to 5 dwellings with all matters reserved aside from access. One late representation has been received and circulated to members. The application site is a broadly rectangular backland plot measuring circa 0.24 hectares, currently making up part of the rear residential garden of the manor house. The northwest boundary faces towards Risegate. The northeast boundary is with 1, 2 and 3 Risegate gardens, and the southeast boundary with land to the rear of 3 Oathorpe Road. Outline planning permission is sought for the erection of 5 detached dwellings with all matters reserved aside from access. So the access to the development would be facilitated by the partial demolition of the masonry retaining wall adjacent to Risegate, with the location indicated in red here. It would also include the construction of inward curving retaining walls either side of an access road with a gradient not greater than 1 to 12. The access would have a drop curved footway crossing and a width of circa 6.59 metres, comprising the access drive, a footway crossing and a grass verge. An indicative site plan has been submitted, although members are reminded that the layout, along with appearance, landscaping and scale, is not being determined as part of this application, with it being an outline planning application. So as a brief walk around the site with some photos, so this is the manor house itself, which is set behind a curved brick wall entrance from Oathorpe Road, and then a walk down Risegate coming from Oathorpe Road with the wall in question along the right hand side of the image, and then just a few photos of the wall walking down along that. This is a rough area of where the partial removal of the wall would be. And again, some further photos until we get to the edge of the wall, which runs parallel to Risegate and makes up the rear or side boundaries of properties on Risegate Gardens. So on the left there is number 1, Risegate Gardens, and you can see the wall running left to right. And this is the side boundary of the front garden of 1 Risegate Gardens. And the rear garden, you can see the brick wall in the back, which makes up the side boundary of the site. And in the background there, you can see the brick wall again behind number 2 Risegate Gardens. These 3 properties are the closest in proximity to the access point on Risegate, and now standing within the site, looking towards the approximate area of where the new access point would be, the rear elevation of the manor house, an outbuilding within the site, another outbuilding which has some outbuildings for 3 Oathorpe Road connected to the rear of them, and the boundary with number 3 Oathorpe Road, the rear garden of 3 Oathorpe Road. This is the rear of number 3 Risegate Gardens, number 2 Risegate Gardens, again number 2 Risegate Gardens, and now the rear garden of number 1, and the side elevation of number 1, which backs onto the application site. These properties are again the properties near to the new opening into the site, obviously seen from the level of the site, which is raised from the road. So in terms of an assessment, officers consider the principle of development to be acceptable, being in accordance with policy 3, spatial strategy of the LPP1, being in a sustainable location and a key area for growth. This is subject to an assessment of heritage, impact on the character of the area, neighbour amenity, highway matters, trees and archaeology, although members are reminded that the application is in outline form with only access to be determined at this time. So the historic wall is proposed to be partially removed, and concerns have been raised with regards to this. The wall is not within a conservation area and is not a listed building. Officers would note a listing was applied for and denied in 2008 with several reasons relating to the quality, appearance and contribution it makes, amongst other things. That said, it has been identified by the Borough Council as a non-designated heritage asset. Given this, in accordance with policy 28 of the LPP2, an assessment of the impact shall be made and any harm must be outweighed by public benefits to be acceptable. The Conservation Officer has identified this to be at the lower end of less than substantial harm, and officers have identified benefits to include a scheme of repair and restoration to the wall, which is secured by condition, the creation of an attractive curved feature entrance, making use of brick from the partial demolition, along with social and economic benefits from up to 5 new dwellings. Having taken a balanced judgment as required by local and national policy for non-designated heritage assets, officers consider the benefits of the scheme would outweigh the harm. So in terms of the access, it would have an appropriate pedestrian and vehicular visibility display, a driveway width in accordance with current standards to serve 5 dwellings, and a gradient not exceeding 1 to 12. And with all this, Notts County Council Highways do not object to the application. So moving on to neighbour amenity, concerns have been raised with regards to this, noting the level changes between the application site. However, this application does relate solely to the access to the site, and the submitted layout plan is purely indicative and would be dealt with at reserved matters stage, and this would be informed by a topographical level survey secured by condition. The no access point would likely result in an increased level of noise from the site. However, given the proximity of the shared driveway to neighbouring properties and noting the built-up nature of the area, it is not considered likely to result in a detrimental impact on the adjoining occupiers. Concerns have also been raised with regards to surface water, noting a history of surface water along Risegate. That said, the government's drainage maps show the site to be low risk. New dwellings and associated hard standing would likely increase the amount of surface water runoff on the site without appropriate drainage works, and it is therefore considered prudent for the implementation of a condition requiring details of surface water drainage scheme. So given this assessment provided, officers recommend the outline application is approved, subject to conditions as set out from page 31 of the agenda. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Bridges. I understand there's 2 speakers now. The first being Miss Dear, who's agent for the applicants. So you've had the benefit of the of not going first and seeing the drill. So when you're ready, the button on the right-hand side will turn you red, and off we go.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Natalie Dear. I'm a chartered town planner and the agent for this application. My clients and I strongly support the recommendation of your officer as set out in the report, and we've worked constructively with him over the last few months. As you're aware, this is an outline application for up to 5 dwellings, with all matters reserved except for access. Details of the proposed access arrangements have been submitted with the application, and Nottinghamshire County Council as Highway Authority have confirmed that these are acceptable. We're very aware of the objections which have been raised with respect to the boundary wall which runs adjacent to Risegate, and we understand that local residents are concerned about the potential impacts on the wall. The historic nature of this wall has been fully acknowledged, and the development has been designed to take this into account. A relatively small section of the wall is proposed to be opened to create access into the site. At this point, the wall is proposed to be curved inwards, and this curved feature will be constructed using the removed bricks from the existing wall. This means that the existing bricks will not be lost as a result of the development. A historic building survey and a structural survey have both been carried out and submitted with the application. The structural survey has confirmed that the wall is structurally sound and capable of accommodating the proposed development. The development will therefore not have a detrimental impact on the integrity of the wall. Indeed, the structural survey report specifically states that the proposed curved return walls will enhance the stability of the existing structure, and this will clearly have a positive benefit for the long-term retention of the wall. The Historic Building Survey states that the wall is of some heritage significance, but that this significance is limited due to the low level of architectural interest. As your officer said, previously Historic England has confirmed that the wall is too plain and too altered to meet the criteria for listing. Neither the wall nor the manor house are listed buildings or in a conservation area. Your officer has concluded that the wall is considered to be a non-designated heritage asset, reflecting the local interest in the wall. This does not mean, however, that no development can or should take place. As you will see from your officer's report, a suite of conditions are proposed that will ensure that the wall is for the most part retained in its current form, that it's appropriately treated in the construction of the development, the wall is to be repaired and restored to a high standard, and that the historic character and interest of the wall are recorded, and that record is deposited with the local historic environment record. Both your officer and your conservation officer state that the level of harm caused to the wall will be at the lower end of less than substantial harm, and I agree with this conclusion. The proposed development will bring significant social and economic benefits. As stated in your officer's report, these benefits outweigh any harm caused. The development will provide for 5 new dwellings within the heart of Cotgrave, a sustainable community which is identified within your local plan as a key area for growth. The proposed development will help deliver this growth. Just to address a couple of other issues raised by residents and ward councillors, the layout and design of the proposed dwellings is not part of the consideration of this application. However, through the submission of the indicative plan, we've demonstrated that up to 5 dwellings can be accommodated comfortably within this site, but that plan is for illustration purposes only, and the details would be considered at reserve matters stage. We've also submitted information from Severn Trent Water, which confirms that there is network capacity and a suitable connection for foul water drainage from the site. Sustainable drainage will be used within the site to address surface water, and the details of this will be secured through planning conditions. This proposal is a sustainable form of development in a community identified for growth in the local plan. It will ensure that the existing boundary wall is retained in almost its entirety, and the curved return features for the new access will enhance the structural soundness and therefore longevity of the wall. As described by your officer, this proposal is a high-quality scheme with social and economic benefits, which is in accordance with your local plan and national planning policy. I therefore urge you to accept the recommendation of your officer and grant planning permission for this development. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And now we have Councillor Chewings, one of the ward members. I'll save you the spiel. Councillor Chewings, you know the drill.
Thank you, Chair. Please bear with me. I'm showing a bit of a sore throat today. Thank you for listening to me today. So let me just reflect on this development or proposed development. So I've lived in Cotgrave my whole life. One of the key features and historical content of the village, along with the church, is this wall. I remember as a child walking down Risegate and seeing that wall. Now that wall has significant historical features. Can we just bring the photos up, please? Because I think it really need to describe how worn and weathered that wall is. Now, as you've seen from the application, there's been 11 objections, nobody actually in favour. All three ward councillors, myself, Councillor Butler, Councillor Ellis, have all objected, and there's been a number of objections from residents, including Mr. and Mrs. Harris, who referred to this wall dating back to at least 1750. Part of the features and characteristics of this wall is the long, sprawling and high wall that runs from Risegate Gardens along the boundary of the Manor House up to Althorpe Road. To interject and cut into that wall to create an opening would change that characteristic of that wall and would destroy a significant feature of Cotgrave, which cannot be replaced. And whilst I appreciate it's an outline planning application and the matters of housing will be done at a later date if this is approved, I think it is of note from the plans there is a variance of about 2.5 metres from the site in question to those on actual Risegate itself, so would pose a question and query about privacy. Now, so that would be dealt with later on through reserve matters, but I think that's a point of note. With regards to flooding in that area, so I've lived in Cotgrave my whole life. Risegate floods on a regular basis. It comes up through the drains, the water comes down Althorpe Road. The sewers in that area are not suitable. And then to add more dwellings and the runoff from such would be concerning. Now, I appreciate that will be dealt with later on, but looking at that site, can a subsystem be put in place? I doubt it very much. To the report, we as a council accept it being an item of significance in the area, but then we're saying that we believe it's a minimal impact. We're on about changing the characteristics of this area. I'm struggling to see the social and economic benefits of building these houses. These are houses which will benefit one person and one person only, and that being the landowner. This would destroy the character of the village to the residents of over 7,500 residents in Cotgrave. That is not requirements. Furthermore, if we look at the local plan part 2, we have sufficient housing allocation for Cotgrave and all key developments within Rushcliffe. And the Greater Nottinghamshire plan, which we're working upon this moment in time, is also identifying surplus housing requirements. So I'm struggling to see the benefit in removing this significant feature for the purpose of Cotgrave. So I ask you, councillors, to consider this matter and to refuse plan application. Thank you.
Thank you. So we've heard from Ms. Deere, who reminds us that there are no highways objections, stating that development has been designed with an understanding of the wall's importance and with its future being secured by condition, and a reminder that the plans submitted at the moment are illustrative only, with all matters of design and layout to be settled at reserved matters stage. And then Councillor Chewings giving us information about the wall as an important piece of village history, which will be changed by the proposals, and also querying the social and economic benefits of the development. So, Mr. Bridges, do you want to pick up on points raised by the speakers, please?
Thank you, Vice Chair. So on the matters of heritage, I think it's obviously acknowledged that the wall does have history in the settlement of Cotgrave, and that's is demonstrated by the fact that there is a heritage assessment of that feature, and the heritage assessment goes into that history. It's not listed, it has no statutory protections at all. However, the Borough Council have considered it a non-designated asset. When we look at it, we are looking at the removal of around 8.9 metres of that wall, which is around 100 metres in total length. So your officers have considered the level of harm that may cause, and it has come down at the lower end of less than substantial in terms of that level of harm when you look at it in totality. And the NPPF requires that we take a balanced decision and a balanced approach when we look at any harms in relation to non-designated heritage assets. In terms of benefits from the scheme, obviously in terms of housing, Cotgrave is a sustainable location for development, and policy 11 of the local plan part 2 outlines that planning permission will be granted on unallocated sites within the built-up area of settlements in principle. So further housing is supported by policy in areas like Cotgrave, as long as the other matters can be appropriately dealt with, such as heritage. But in principle, there are social and economic benefits of further housing within a sustainable location. Flooding has largely been dealt with, as I say. A flood risk plan is required by condition in the recommendation. There hasn't been a detailed assessment at this point in time, but it could be controlled by condition, which is on the recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sharman. So on to discussion and debate. Who'd like to go first? Thank you, Councillor Mason.
Thank you. I do see the point about the wall, and I think there is an issue there. It may not be sort of protected in any way, but there's obviously been some recognition of it by the council. So I'd like to think that it would be protected. I can see that, okay, the gap will be only 8.9 metres. Is that right? You were saying so out of 100 metres. So perhaps not that, but I know the planning application is for 5. The outline planning permission is for 5. And although, yes, they can fit on that, but because of the angle and the boundaries, I noticed that there is a house that's right up to it, and there's a house on the site which is also right up to it. And I just think that perhaps the site would benefit from one less house, and maybe 3 or 4 houses would fit. It's not that there isn't the room to physically put them there, but they are having to jiggle it about and do different angles just to try. But they've still got it right up to 2 of those properties at the far end. And I would like to think that that could be considered in the application. Do we actually look at that application as 5, or can we recommend 4, or do we say 1 too many?
So, Mr. Sharman.
Thank you, Vice Chair. So, yeah, in relation to that, the application's that for up to 5 dwellings. So if
it'll be decided
by the reserve matters.
One.
So if we were looking at the design and it felt that there were too many, then we could look and say it may be less. That's
right. I haven't been on planning for quite a few years, and I like to check that things are still the same. Apart from that, as I look at this, Cotgrave does have houses close together, and perhaps this is possible. I do get that perhaps some of the drains and things, but it has been said that the drains can take this. So, and if there were a few less houses on that site, that would be a bonus as far as I'm concerned. So, yes, I have no deep objections to the houses going on that site. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. Councillor Brown.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. This is an outline planning permission, and we still yet don't know what the planned houses are going to look like. If they're contemporary modern houses, it's going to be totally out of character, like Councillor Turing pointed out, out of character of the village with a historic wall. So that worries me somewhat. The flooding issue, we've already heard that this area floods. If you're putting 5 dwellings down there, concrete, water's going to run off, and sure, it's going to make the flooding issue worse. At the moment, it's soak away. And just one other point I'd like to make, and recommendation 8, it's just an observation really. Any demolition thereafter shall be undertaken using hand tools held in the hand only to avoid damage to this historic wall. Well, you're knocking it down. Surely that's damage in the first place, and anyway. They're my observations, Chair.
And thank you for them, Councillor Brown. Is there anything that you want to come on? I suspect we're going to be told if flooding levels and all the rest of it is for reserve matters, but I'll leave you to respond.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Yeah, in terms of the character, clearly if they were to come forward at a reserve matter stage with dwellings that were considered to be out of character, then that would be a determination for that point, and we could go back on design if that was a concern at that point in time. In terms of drainage, typically drainage for new developments has to improve on the existing rate. So any hard surfaces would likely drain to a system that would then be stored on site and release at a lower rate to the existing system or to a soak away. So generally drainage plans will result in an improvement on the existing situation on site. And in terms of the removal of the wall, the report itself identifies there is a level of harm to that wall. We're not trying to say there is no harm, but it's the balancing exercise that's important following that. Thank you.
Councillor Thomas and then Councillor Calvert next in the queue.
Okay, thank you. And I've got a couple of questions about the wall, and I've got some questions about other things as well. As far as the wall is concerned, is it currently protected at all? I mean, could the owners knock it down if they wanted to at the moment? And will it be protected after the application if the application is approved? So
should we take it sequentially? So that I think that's a good way of making sure that those questions or comments get the answer that they deserve, Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. So yes, the wall has no current statutory protections on it, and it could be removed. In terms of the development as proposed, there is clearly a number of conditions that highlight the wall's retention and restoration as part of the scheme. Following that, there is no, again, statutory protection, but during the course of the works, there is a scheme of restoration to be taking place.
So could any protection be added to the rest of the wall?
No, I don't think there's any level of protection that could be provided to that wall.
Shall I ask the other things? In terms of biodiversity net gain, presumably there's a requirement for biodiversity net gain on the site, is there? I'm concerned that the site was cleared beforehand, as I understand it. Trees have been cut down and the site has been cleared. And if there is a requirement to do a biodiversity net gain calculation, I'm quite concerned that it should go back to before they cleared the site, if you see what I mean.
Can we pause there to get those responses? And then I'm not going to cut you off, Councillor Thomas, I promise. I'm trying to make sure that each section is properly considered.
Thank you, Chair. So in terms of biodiversity net gain, this application was submitted before statutory biodiversity net gain came into place. So there is no requirement for a statutory biodiversity net gain. We have got a condition on the recommendation which requires ecological enhancements on the site, but there is no requirement for a statutory net gain on the site.
Okay, thank you. And are the trees remaining protected?
So no trees at the moment have any TPO, and the site isn't within a conservation area. However, during the construction works, there is a condition that requires their protection during construction works, for any that are to be retained. And in terms of replacing any other trees, that would be dealt with as part of the reserve matters application, because that involves the landscaping.
Okay, thank you. Okay, keep going.
Please do.
I've lost my paper. Oh, here we go. Is there another wall? Is there a wall along the back gardens of the site to the northwest, the road to the northwest? And has any consideration been given to the value and the condition and the preservation of that wall?
So is it the wall to the northeast with Risegate Gardens that you're talking about?
Yes, that one.
Yeah, so in condition 5, that does require a restoration and repair to both the north east and the northwest walls. So both will be considered as part of that condition in terms of with the aim of their kind of long-term retention and improvements.
Okay, thank you. I'm nearly at the end, Chair. I'm just following on from Councillor Mason's questions about the proximity of the indicative house on the indicative plan to one of the houses in the neighbouring houses, and it does kind of reflect on the possible, on the viability of getting that number of houses on that plan. I was just wanting to check the orientation of that house, really, and how close it is to the boundary, and whether there are windows on that side, and so on and so forth. If you put the plan up, I can tell you which house I mean, but I don't know what the address is.
So this is an outline. We don't have any details of windows or anything. Obviously, we know where the windows are on the existing properties, but we can't sit here tonight and talk about where a window could be, the orientation of a building. All we have is an indicative plan to show how 5 could be accommodated on the site. We're not sitting here saying we think that's a good solution. It's just it can be done. Now, when we get to the detail and when we get the houses and the windows and the orientation, then we might think actually this isn't the right way to go, and we need amendments, and we can go through that process. But tonight we can't talk we can't consider where windows are, the impact on dwellings in terms of specific where dwellings are going to be, because we don't have that information in front of us.
Okay, I wasn't talking about where the windows would be on the new house. I'm talking about that house that's on the right-hand edge there in the middle, that's quite close to one of the new houses. I'm just wondering if there's, windows and how close that is to the boundary, and whether there are windows, and how critical it is to the position of that house, really.
Yes, so that's the side elevation of the neighbouring property that I believe you're referring to, Councillor Thomas. So it's got the one window, high level window in the side elevation of the property, facing towards the application site.
Councillor Calvert, you're on.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Yeah, I think that the location is extremely sustainable, particularly in comparison to the previous application, and it provides great opportunity for access to the town centre, good public transport links as well. So sustainable location, but what I wanted clarity on was what we would be approving since this is outlined, because I've looked at the site layout, indicative site layout, and I'm very disappointed to see yet more big detached houses on what is a very sustainable location. There would be a great opportunity for smaller scale houses, affordable houses as well. So my query is, how much are we tied down to what is being shown there indicatively when it comes to the next stage? Thank you.
Yeah, so effectively we don't know the size of the houses and what they would be, and that is something that would be dealt with at reserve matters. So as you can see in condition 2 of the proposed conditions, that includes scale as the 4th point of reserve matters. So we don't know if they're single story, 2-story, 1 bed, 5 bed. That's good to be decided in the future.
Councillor Chaplin next, and I think Councillor Mason's indicating. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. My question's about the curve that's going to be put on the wall, because looking at the plan that I found in the application, you've got an 8.9 metre gap, but then the wall carries on for considerably more than that round the corner. So is that, you're going to use the bricks until they run out and then use other bricks, or is it going to be a shorter, smaller wall? I think one of the significant features of this wall in Cotgrave is its size, that you do get that, like Councillor Chewing's, almost a comforting feel from it. And so I could see that if you're then going to taper it down and take it round the corner at a lower level, you're going to lose that feeling of a big comforting wall.
Yep. So the amount of wall removed is that 8.9 meters, but the gap, once they've constructed the curved wall, would only be 6.59 meters. So it wouldn't be as large of a break as the amount of wall removed, because as you say, a part of it will be reconstructed using that curved wall method.
So, sorry, can I come back? So how much of that goes round is going to be wall of the same height in the same bricks? Because that seems to come all the way around the side of house one, and on the other side, surely there are not going to be enough bricks from the gap to do that.
So again, that is something that will be determined at reserve matters stage if this were to go through. I'm unsure on the number of the condition, but one of the conditions does relate to the design of the inward curving wall. If you could just bear with me 1 second, I'll be able to have a look for you.
And perhaps while they're doing that, I ought to, speaking of conditions, I ought to remind everybody about the late representation that we had here, which was an amendment to condition number 3.
Yeah, thanks for your patience. So it's condition 5, which is prior to any demolition of any wall taking place. So that has 2 parts to the condition. The first part is the scheme of repair and restoration to both the northeast and the northwest wall. And the second point is the design and the construction of a new site access retaining walls. So they're the walls that we're referring to in that condition.
Sorry, just to complicate matters a little further, this is an outline application, access only. So the access that's being punched through and the rounded walls, but then as the wall gets into the site, it depends on how the design and the layout of the proposal will become. So that detail will need to come through the reserve matters as well. So we have a condition securing those details, but then we also have a reserve matters, and we'd need to understand where the properties are going to be and where those boundaries, so exactly how that wall continues, exactly where it goes, we would need the reserve matters as well to kind of clarify all of that, and then the materials and etc.
Okay, so if at that stage the wall was only a low wall that committee didn't feel suited the idea of the wall, we could refuse all the houses on those grounds. That seems unlikely.
You could refuse the reserve matters on the details, but there's also a discharge of condition that we'd have to look at as well. So we'd need to be careful as to exactly what's being shown. But yeah, I mean, if the reserve matters comes in and you're not happy with the detail of it, then we'd have to consider that and look at that. But where the access becomes and where it becomes a boundary treatment for the development is something that we need to consider. But we've got that condition that covers it. I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, just to add in, obviously there's a level differences on this site. So part of the reason the wall is so high is because it's a retaining structure. Now, whilst the final levels are reserved by a condition as part of the reserve matters, clearly the walls where they come round will need to tie into the existing heights at that point, and then the details further into the site would be as it's not said reserved by the reserve matters in the condition.
Thank you. I'd like to move the recommendation that outline planning permission is granted, subject to those conditions there. And probably when it comes back to us at some stage, I'll probably be thinking of either one or two less houses, but that's it for now.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. Councillor Thomas?
I think I'm coming back to both Councillor Mason's comment and Councillor Calvert's comment, actually, looking at condition 19 that says that development hereby permitted shall not exceed 5 residential units, and the indicative plan has got 5 large houses. So I would say that condition 19 precludes the, would prevent more smaller houses, and I would suggest, if we are moving to approve this, that we remove condition 19. I don't see how it can be justified on the basis that the mix of the houses and the size of the houses has not yet been determined.
Just in relation to that point, the application, the description of the development is for up to 5 houses. That is how it has been advertised. That is how it has been considered. And that is what they have applied for. But also, if you were to go above that, things like your transport and driveway would all need to be reconsidered, reassessed. Highways have obviously only commented on a driveway for 5 units, up to 5 units. If that were to change, and we've already approved the access, that could have other impacts that are not being considered at this stage.
Councillor Wells?
Thank you, Vice Chair. Could the officers tell me what is the height of the garden to the height of the road?
So in terms of the level, so the wall itself adjacent to Risegate is circa 3.9 metres in height. Internally, so within the site, that same wall, again, it's not perfectly level the whole way, but where it was measured, it was 1.6 metres internally, which means that the level of the road to the level of the site was 2.3 metres. Again, the levels will be more accurately provided as part of condition 4, I believe. So that will be provided in greater detail if it were to be approved and if the reserve matters were to come forward.
Thank you. I'm concerned about the entrance because the slope, you said 1 in 12, so that is an awful lot of soil or rubble to get rid of, and with the slope and the water coming off the slope into the road, there's going to be a flooding, because there was pictures of the drains flooding in the comments, so that has to be really looked at. And as the councillors over there said, I think 5 is too much on this site, and they shouldn't be ultra modern houses because it won't go in with the wall. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Calvert.
Thank you. Yeah, just picking up on what Councillor Thomas said, and I'm very pleased that she drew my attention to condition 19. I can't see there being a problem in having more residential units, which may be smaller and thus would have a smaller, less requirement for the number of vehicles. So if it was 8 units requiring just allowing 1 vehicle per unit rather than 5 large ones where it might be 2 vehicles, you actually do better.
So with any application, we can only determine what's in front of us. If we would like more, then we we can't ask for more. All we can do is consider what's in front of us. If you think 5 is not acceptable, then that's a decision that you have to make, but you can't determine at this stage that more is acceptable. All you can do is decide what is in front of you. So whilst I appreciate your comments, all we can determine is 5 acceptable on this site. Thank you.
So no, we've had a proposal from Councillor Mason moving the recommendation of the report. Is anybody minded to second that proposal? Okay, so we're in a position at the moment where nobody else is indicating to speak, and we don't have neither a speaker nor a proposal. So I'll leave that with you. I'll leave that with you briefly. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. Can we object on the grounds of 5 dwellings as it stands there?
On what basis?
We want less. Just the smaller, so smaller house. We don't know what sort of houses they are, but we're all in agreement. I think several of us are in agreement that they are the wrong. Well, 5 houses, too many.
So we would need to know, if making a decision to refuse this application because 5 is not acceptable, we would need to identify the harm. Now, we've said it says up to 5. We don't have the detail in front of us. We would need to demonstrate how 5 are not acceptable and what that harm is. What's the difference between 5 and 4? How do we think it can't be accommodated on the site? So if that is something that members are thinking about refusing, before that decision's made, I would strongly advise that you identify what that harm is and how you've come to the decision that 5 is not okay and 4 is.
Councillor Calvert. My issue is that I feel it could be more than 5. I'm just trying to get clarity on whether there could be a change when the final application comes in. Whether we're told here that the layout can be changed considerably.
So there's an option to refuse on 5 not being acceptable because it's not a good use of land. There's an option to refuse it that 5 is too many, that 5 is not enough. That is an option, but again, you would need to justify why on those terms and how you think that you could justify that to an inspector at an appeal.
Just to add, there's nothing to stop the applicant coming in with an application later down the line where if they felt they could get more, they could put in a separate application for more, irrelevant of this application at this point in time.
Councillor Thomas.
With respect to condition 19, I'd like to ask how officers came to the conclusion that the site was okay for 5 but not for more, given that you don't know how big they are.
Because we can't consider anything other than the application that's been presented in front of us. So officers are of the opinion that 5 is acceptable. We don't have a proposal in front of us for 6, 7, 8, whatever it is. So when we're not considering that tonight, we're considering 5. We feel 5 is acceptable, and that's what's in the recommendation.
Councillor Brown.
I'm just trying to help out here, Chair. I think we're all getting a little bit confused and can't refuse it on the amount of houses, but I think we're all in agreement about the destruction of a historic wall. Is that a possibility that we could refuse the application on that?
Again, yes, but there would need to be justification as to how that that balance has been made. So in terms of heritage harm, it's not a statutory designation, it's not listed, it's only a local asset, so the bar isn't as high as you would have as a local a listed building. So it is a balance. The MPPF, it might be useful if I just get it up and read the text of the MPPF to members. There needs to be a balance. Now, if members find that they have made that balance and it falls differently to what officers have recommended, then that's in the gift of members. But let me just, give me 2 seconds, let me just get the appropriate, the effect, so paragraph 209 of the MPPF states, the effect of an application on the significance of a non-designated heritage asset, which is what this wall is, should be taken into account in determining the application. In weighing applications that directly or indirectly affect non-designated heritage assets, a balanced judgment will be required, having regard to the scale of any harm or loss and the significance of the heritage asset. Now that balance is in detail in the report, and we can find the paragraphs if members want to remind themselves of that. But it is the loss and the significance. It's approximately 100 metres. And it's 8.9, so it's not even 10% less of a 10% loss of that wall. So it's weighing that up, and members would need to have that clear justification as to why they feel differently to officers. They're allowed to, but they would need to make that clear before they came to that decision. So we're understanding of how that decision has come about.
And it's perhaps worth mentioning Councillor Thomas's incisive question earlier about the current level of protection for the wall as it stands today being nil. Councillor Georgiou.
On the area that we're taking away from the wall, how deep or how high is the ground behind that wall? Do we know?
Approximately 2.6 metres.
2.6 metres.
From the level of the road, yeah.
Right, okay, so that is a retaining wall. So that amount of earth being moved, would that cause an issue on the drainage and the makeup of the road and the other properties? I'm just trying to...
So there's been a structural report into the condition of the wall, which talks about whether the removal of the earth would have an impact on the wall itself, which has not raised any concerns, and matters of the drainage would be dealt with by condition in the recommendation, which is prior to commencement. And there's also a separate condition, which is standard for all highway schemes, that the roads and the internal roads are drained so that they do not drain to the existing public highway. So you don't end up with water rushing down a slope and just sitting on the road at the bottom. So there's also a separate condition that covers the drainage to the road as well.
Thank you, Councillor Mander.
I was just going to ask, looking at that photograph that we've seen just recently, I can see what Councillor Thomas means about there's already been some destruction on the site, because there appeared to be a sawn off tree in front of the picture of where the windows were. I was just wondering whether we could have the tree officer for Rushcliffe having a look at those lime and yew trees, please, and see whether a TPO could be put in place before any further destruction takes place. I know there are, because as far as I understand it, we can't really do anything about this until an actual application comes in. It's like all these other things that are being talked about. We can't do anything about them until an application comes in. We can't say, well, we'd like smaller houses, perhaps 5 houses, but smaller ones, and perhaps true affordable accommodation. We can't ask for that until the actual proper application, full application comes in. But I did wonder whether we could put a TPO on the trees.
Thank you, Councillor Mallender. So we have had discussions with the tree officer. Obviously, it's unfortunate that trees have been removed from the site already, but they weren't protected in any way. The existing trees on site, because of the way the site is facing the road and where the trees are, they haven't been considered of high enough public amenity value to be considered for a tree protection order. That being said, they are protected by condition during the construction works, and we would clearly expect any future reserve matters layout to consider the retention of any existing trees on site, as well as proposing additional planting through a landscaping scheme. Thank you.
Okay, so as it stands, there isn't anybody else indicating to speak or put another motion forward. So I think we need to make some progress and come to a decision. So I'm going to second Councillor Mason's recommendation, Councillor Mason's motion, sorry, to go with a recommendation of the report. I'll have a vote and see how we go from there. So I'll ask those in favour. Okay, and those against? So we need to make some progress, and that means alternative motion. It was four in favour of the recommendation, five against. So we're going to need a positive motion to vote on.
Sorry, just to interject for a moment as well. I've put the red line site plan up on site rather than the actual site plan, just to see whether it helps members. The layout, just to ignore what layout is proposed, because that's not what we're considering. You're only considering the access. The red line area there, could it accommodate 5 dwellings? There's no requirement for them to be detached. They could come forward as a row of 5 terrace properties. It could come forward as 2 semis and a terrace. It could come forward as 2 semis and 3 detached. We really don't know at this point in time. So it's not precluding that there would definitely be 5 detached units, purely because that's what's shown on the indicative plan. You could come forward in any combination of unit types in terms of how they're designed and how they're laid out. So just in terms of that layout plan, maybe it's easy just to consider what the red line plan is on the site at the moment, rather than looking at the suggested layout and the indicative layout. Thank you.
Okay, so we find ourselves in a position at the moment where we are not in a position to progress. I'm going to suggest a short adjournment for 5 minutes for people to collect their thoughts, and we'll reconvene in 5 minutes. Can I just ask some colleagues to take their seats, please? Right, thank you. Thank you for the for that time. Just before we progress any further, just want to. It's beholden on me to say that it's acknowledged that during the adjournment, some members of the committee have been in discussion with more ward members who are not on the committee itself. And therefore asking all members to now reconfirm that they have not been prejudiced by any of those discussions and are still considering this matter with an open mind. And if that's the case, may I ask you to raise your hand if you confirm that you're not prejudiced and still considering with an open mind. Thank you. Well, thank you. And I'm going to just turn to Councillor Thomas, who I think is going to ask for a point of clarification.
Could officers clarify, in point 4 of the officer report, it says outline planning permission is sought for the erection of 5 detached dwellings with all matters reserved aside from access. Could they confirm whether or not they actually mean detached dwellings, because they've also said that the layout and size of the houses is to be determined.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas, for bringing that to our attention. It should be sought for the erection of up to 5 dwellings. There shouldn't be any reference to detached dwellings. That's simply what's shown on the indicative plan. So it is for the erection of up to 5 dwellings. There is no requirement for them to be detached.
So could I take it back to a vote then to go with the recommendation, but with a note highlighting that the size and mix and type of houses has not been determined at this stage, and that is fully open for discussion at the reserve matter stage, despite the fact that the officer report said detached, and despite the fact that the indicative master plan shows large detached houses.
Thank you, Councillor. Just bear with us a moment.
In terms of the informative note, an informative to confirm that the size, mix and type of housing has not been agreed and is up for consideration is something we can add to a decision if you are minded that way.
I think it would just need to be minuted, to be honest, as part of the decision.
We're just checking something, so bear with us, please. Okay, thank you. So I think we're just clarifying some matters of procedure in relation to being a similar motion to before, and advise that as a result of the point of clarification from Councillor Thomas and the addition of an informative, then, you know, yes, we could, you know, we could proceed to a vote if Councillor Thomas has a seconder to that. Councillor Mason, you prepared to, having proposed it in the first, having proposed previously, prepared to do that?
I'll second the recommendation to move it with those provisos that you've said.
Okay. So I ask again, all those in favour of that? That's 6 in favour. Those against? And 3 against. So on that vote, on that basis, the outline permission is granted subject to conditions and informatives that we've done. And I'll invite Councillor Butler back to the chair. With feels like another fine mess you've got me into, Councillor Butler. But we'll save the Laurel and Hardy rest of the Laurel and Hardy gags for later.
Right, thank you, colleagues, and we are going on to our final application for this evening, which is West Park, Loughborough Road, West Bridgford. This is a Borough Council application, and Mr. Elliott, is it you doing this one? Yeah. So, Mr. Elliott, please, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this is the application site, the northern corner of West Park.
aerial view of the application site here. You can see the wider cricket field with the allotments to the north and the existing residential properties to the north. Just some photos just to orientate you around the application site. This is the main vehicular access into West Park with the main car park just on the right hand side of the photo. Another shot of the main car park with the existing pavilion within the background. Now this is the existing practice facilities within the site. The application site is just on the right hand side beyond the fence that you can see within that photo. Another shot of the existing practice facilities. You can see that these facilities are looking a bit tired and at the end of their usable life. This is a shot from the main field looking across the application site towards the residential properties in the background along Chestnut Grove with the existing tennis courts to the right of the photo. Again, another shot of the application site with residential properties in the background. The existing tennis courts along with the existing driveway. And this is from the application site looking back across the existing cricket field towards the main pavilion. This is from another angle looking towards the application site with the more recently constructed pavilion on the right hand side. And this is the layout of the proposed development. So this is the replacement cricket facilities, which are contained within the orange line within that layout plan. It would consist of 5 cricket lanes within an enclosed structure. You can just about see the blue faint line which runs along the rear of the practice facilities. That indicates boundary acoustic fencing at 2.5 metres. And then the purple line is a second row of acoustic fencing at 1.5 metres. Just a zoomed in version here of the layout plan. You can see the pavilion building and the tennis courts here for reference. And this is an elevation plan. So this is the proposed new structure that will be fully enclosed with nets all around. And this is a side profile of the proposed development. You can just about see the black lines, the taller one of which is the higher acoustic fencing, and then the smaller black line indicates the second row of acoustic fencing at 1.5 metres. So in terms of considerations, we have received some concerns from local residents, mainly concerning the potential impact from a noise perspective. Officers have carefully considered this point. The application has been supported with a noise impact assessment and some mitigation measures. The Environmental Health Department have reviewed these carefully and raised no objection. However, there are some recommended conditions that you'll be able to see on the report back. In terms of the overall assessment, West Park is a long established cricket ground. And as you'll be able to see from those photos, the existing facilities are looking a bit tired. This proposed development would form a replacement of those facilities. The principle, therefore, of the development is acceptable from an officer's point of view, and the potential impact on neighbouring community from noise is felt to be fully considered and mitigated through the recommended conditions, which consist of a noise management condition, as well as operating hours and a restriction on external lighting. There's no other objections from technical consultees, and this application becomes before members with an officer recommendation for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Elliott. And we do have a guest speaker on this. So, Mr. Lee, Harrison Lee, thank you for your patience through. It's a long evening, so thank you for that. So, you've seen what happens. You have up to 5 minutes to talk to us. And if you're still speaking at 4.5, we'll just tell you there's 30 seconds left. So as soon as you're ready, press the right button and the red light will come on.
Brilliant. Thank you much. Thank you for your time. Just confirm. So we are residents of 19 Chestnut Grove. So our property directly backs on to where the application site is due to be. So we're very directly affected by it. Due to the time limitation, I'm going to try and keep it as brief as I can and constrain my comments to 3 main areas that we're concerned about. Principally the visual impact, security, and most concerningly noise. From a visual perspective, I mean, there's lots of talk about this being a cricketing facility, but you'll have seen from all those pictures, there's lots of green space at the moment, and the application in its current form will take up pretty much the entirety of, essentially there are two fields. There's a smallish field blocked off by a fence, and there's the larger field where the cricket pitch is. And that first field will be entirely taken up by this new facility. It's, as you've seen, it's almost 40 metres wide, 20 metres deep, 4 metres tall, backing up directly onto our property. If you look at the nimble letter, which will be in there somewhere, it's comments filed by a third party, you can see the view from the back of our house. So you literally have the entire back of our house, 4 metres high, taken up by that. So the visual impact will be quite significant. From a security perspective, I'm not sure what's really been put in the report about security and access, because if it's just assumed the current provision will be enough, that's quite concerning. We already get individuals, usually younger age, getting out to antisocial behaviour, going into the tennis courts, particularly the small children's ones, on the top of the containers which are used for storage, stomping around on there. So what's going to be done about accessing that area in particular, but also the individual nets? Because it's okay if we're just assuming there's going to be a fence that might get locked, but as with the tennis courts, people are just going to hop over that fence and continue using it outside the operating hours. That would be a concern. And there doesn't seem to be much of a plan in place for ensuring security, particularly as it backs onto our house. The likelihood, as we suspect, as it currently is that if people are using it too early or too late in the day, it's going to fall upon local residents to have to go into some sort of confrontational scenario where we're going to have to say, please stop, it's too early, it's too late. It doesn't really feel like we should be put upon to that extent. And then the main one is the noise. Again, lots of big green fields at present. I really, really struggle to believe, and this is according to the report you have in front of you, that at its optimum, it could be 900 balls being bowled and hit per hour. Even if we halve that, just for good measure, and say 450 per hour, that's a ball being hit every 10 seconds, some metres from the back of our house. Deeming as this, I think the report mentioned, well, because it's already a cricketing facility, yes, but at the moment, the actual cricket strip of the pitch is about 100 metres away and is used several times a week. And the nets are currently about 30 to 40 metres, well, I'm not sure, it's not in the report really, but it looks about 30 to 40 metres behind a fence. So making that it's a comparable level of noise when we're increasing number of lanes by 150% and putting about 30 odd metres closer to the other residential properties. Again, I have concerns, and my main concern is we're only going to find out how much the real impact is once they're up and running, and then once it's up for residents to have to make complaints. So it's good there's going to be a plan in place, but what that plan is, nobody yet seems to know, other than the fact we'll be able to, if there's a complaint made once a year, then they can be reviewed, which again seems somewhat inadequate. As a final point, and we did raise this, I think, by several people who objected, it's unclear to us why the proportion, why one, it has to be 5 lanes, why I have to increase it by 150%. You know, we've started from, there was 2 before, we're now saying it couldn't be 3 or 4, which could impact, one, the placement of those lanes within the facility. I know there was talk about impacting the cricket pitch and the football pitches, but why, if we reduce the number of lanes, it couldn't be further from the residential properties, it couldn't back onto the allotments, which surely would be less impact to anyone if we had it. So the number of lanes, the orientation of the lanes, all of these things doesn't really seem to come in there. It seems to be, we would like 5, and that's where they've got to go. And well, we'll just have to lump it. So yes, I think if you're minded to go ahead, we really would ask, oh, and the final point I mustn't forget, 12 hours of operation a day. The building we're sat in right now is a sports facility. On the weekends, it closes at 5 or 6. Why local residents should have from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., which according to report isn't that late. I mean, most people who have children would, particularly young children, have them in bed before 9 o'clock. And so hearing a cricket ball being hit until 9 o'clock at night on summer evenings when you've got the windows open through a property. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Yes, we are strict for the timing. So, points well made. Thank you. So yes, so we've heard from Mr. Lee that we're worried about the visual impact and the loss of fields and the noise in particular, and also a bit concerned about potential antisocial behaviour and people getting in who shouldn't be getting in. And do we know why we're requesting 5 lanes at this stage, and the position of them? I suspect that's simply because that's what the applicant is asking, but we may not have the answer to that. And also the point about the hours of operation. So who's coming back on between you? If you come back on those, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'll try and cover those. So in terms of the security, obviously we've seen from the photos that the current facilities are left open. This will be a fully enclosed structure, so by its very nature, much more secure than the existing facilities, which could be locked. So I would say that was an improvement over the existing open facilities in terms of security. You've mentioned that in terms of intensity of use, there would be no restriction on the intensity of the use of the current facilities, so that we would have no control over that at present. So that could be ramped up regardless of whether or not it's approved or not. The hours of use, the structure wouldn't be externally lit, so there would be a natural restriction. It would be much more in terms of summer and springtime use, maybe early autumn, but that would naturally limit the time, and that would be a maximum 9 till 9. It may actually be a lot less than that because of the fact that it wouldn't be usable after dark. I think that's the main points.
Yes, just a clarification about and I think it's probably we know the answer to this, but the question was raised: why 5 lanes now as opposed to perhaps 2 or 3, for example?
Yeah. Okay. Well, that is what's put before us. Yeah. Obviously, that it is looking to be an improved facility over the current ones. But yes, that's what's before us now. So that's what we have to make a decision on.
Thank you. Right, colleagues. So we've heard the application details. We've heard from Mr. Lee, who has concerns. Who would like to raise? Councillor Ellis.
Thank you, Chair. I think the speaker made some very pertinent points. So, although I'm not opposed to this application in principle, it doesn't seem to me to be very well constructed. Certainly the question of why 5 lanes instead of 3 or 4, and certainly the position of the lanes needs to be thought about. So I would be unhappy at the way that this application has been presented so far. I think a rethink is necessary.
Okay, I think we might be told that, as we often hear, that we have the application in front of us as is. So you can't really do a rethink, so to speak, unless perhaps permission is refused and a new application comes in. Is that what you're thinking?
Chair. I just think that this application will be prejudicial to the speaker, most certainly, and his immediate neighbours, and I don't think that that is fair and equitable. How we address it and get something more sensible on the table, I'm not sure, but that would be my desire.
I think we can get some guidance from the officers on process on this. So who's picking up on that? Great.
Thank you, Chair. So just in terms of your queries over the location and the position of the structure and why it's in this location, it's our understanding that the existing cricket pitch, the Sport England requirements, there are certain runoff areas which limits where on this site you could position the nets that are outside of those zones. So that has left us with this part of the site, which is where the application has been proposed. The number of nets themselves is obviously determined by the applicant in terms of what demand they see may be there and what they're looking to cater for. So we don't have any ability to influence that. But obviously the applicant has put forward a noise assessment which relates to the 5 lanes that are being proposed. And the Borough Environmental Health team have also reviewed that noise assessment and have come to the conclusion that, subject to conditions, they do not object. I think there's an acknowledgement that there will be a level of change, but it's whether there's any significant harm or not that is the assessment to be made. Hopefully that clarifies for you, Councillor.
One other point, Chair. Even if the application is approved, I think the hours ought to be restricted. 9 till 6, or at a pinch 9 till 7, but 9 till 9 is totally unrealistic when it's next door to families.
Okay, thank you. I think we've made a note of that, and but we have a few more speakers. So, Councillor Thomas, please.
Yeah, I'm sorry, this is probably a really stupid question. Well, I think anybody that knows anything about cricket might think this is a stupid question. Which end makes the noise, and which end is it the man with the bat that makes a noise, and which end is he standing? Is he standing at the side nearest the houses, or is he standing at the side nearest the field?
Could, of course, be a female cricket player, Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Yeah, so to clarify, it's the end where the bat hits the ball is what makes the noise, and the end the batters will be standing is the end closest to the residential properties. But in that regard, that's where the acoustic fence is proposed behind them. But the proximity of the acoustic fence to the source of the noise, the closer it is, the better it is at controlling that level of noise. So if it was at the other end, the noise has a further area to disperse before the acoustic fence would be less effectively, if it was at the other end of the pitch. So I believe that is the reasoning that it's at that end, if that helps.
Does that help? Do you want to come back, or are you pondering, thinking? Okay. Right.
Pondering, Chair, I did have another question, but I've forgotten what it was now.
Right, Councillor, Councillor Calvert, please.
Yeah, in reading the report, it was paragraph 33. I saw it says, in terms of local need, the proposed development would replace an existing practice facility, and I thought, well, it does more than replace it; it increases it, and as the speaker said, by 150%. And I didn't feel there was any great justification in the report itself for such a significant increase, and thus such a environmental impact. I was wondering as well whether there had been any discussion with the local residents by the applicant before submitting the application. Query.
Okay, we'll get answers for that. I think your paragraph 33 does, it says is therefore considered that the local need of development has been demonstrated. So that it forms part of the application, doesn't it? But we'll get some clarification on that. Thank you.
So yeah, the justification of this type of facility is acceptable, but there is an acknowledgement that further through the report that there is an increase, which is why the noise report's there, which is why the acoustic fence is proposed. So yes, whilst it doesn't necessarily say it's in addition in that specific sentence, that's about how acceptable it is in principle, but we have made that assessment that it is an increase and that there is a noise association with that, and that's where the noise impact assessment has come through, where the acoustic fences have been proposed. In terms of discussions with residents, we're not the applicants, so we don't know. I don't think there's any evidence in front of us to say that has occurred. I don't.
Okay. Councillor Mason.
Thank you. They say that the two that are no longer usable, were they on that same site, on that same bit of land there? But there was just two of them. Where were they before?
I think they were further away, but we'll.
Yeah, that's what I think. Yeah. Where were the two? Whatever you call them, where they bowl and bat. Nets.
Right.
Where were the two nets?
We're just showing you on the cursor there.
Yeah, you can spot the cursor.
Where?
Where?
The cursor on the screen.
Oh, right. They were there, but obviously they couldn't get more in that particular. I mean, as far as I can see, looking at the map, that is the only place that they can be. Certainly they couldn't be nearer to because that's where the cricket ground is it? So and that's where the circle is. So they couldn't be anywhere else. And obviously, a need has been demonstrated, as has been said here. And from what I can remember of having been at the nets at Trent Bridge, indoors this was inside, the sound does carry more away from the batsman. And so it wouldn't directly be there. I can also see that, yes, it is quite frightening when you think that there's going to be a lot of noise, and probably at 9 o'clock, but that is only for a short time in the summer because it's getting dark already. But I do see that it could be annoying. I'd like to think that because the boundary fencing that's there, is that new, or is that there already, the boundary fencing? I just wondered, did noise carry through them at their 1.5 and the other ones? So there's two lots of fencing.
So it's proposed. So yes,
it is
that
is proposed.
Yeah.
Actually, I see a lot of young people when I go to Trent Bridge to see the T20. Most of the people there now are young people aspiring to play cricket. And so I believe that they're more than likely that there is a need for it. So I would like to hesitate, but I would like to move the recommendation to go forward with this and to propose and move the recommendation.
Okay, thank you.
As
per the report.
To accept as the report.
Okay,
yes.
thank you. Councillor Brown.
I'm happy to second that, Chair.
Thank you. I think there are a couple. Yes, now you see we've got more speakers. Did you want to come in at this stage, or? Yeah. So Councillor Mallender and then Councillor Wells, please.
Yeah, I really can't see why we can't put it where it was before. But and I'm pleased to see that there are going to be some more trees planted. Will they be so that they can also help to block the sound? Because it does specifically say that there's going to be some more trees and hedgerows planted. I'm going to bring up another issue, and you can all guess what it is. Why is it that a borough that voted unanimously to be plastic free is proposing putting some artificial grass down? I have just been searching and searching for an alternative that looks like artificial grass that's not made of plastic, which is gives you 15% of plastic pollution in rivers and seas, 15% from sports pitches. So can you not think of an alternative to put on the ground, considering that this council is supposed to be concerned about that sort of thing? Because this is quite a large area of plastic grass. And perhaps if we had fewer rather than 5, it wouldn't be quite so bad, although it would still be bad. Okay. Thank you.
I think the fact is plastic grass. We are here as the planning authority deciding an application that's in front of us. We're not the ones who have decide if we're going to have plastic grass put down.
Yes, but this is a planning application by Rushcliffe Borough Council.
Yes, it is, but who the applicant is really does not come into the
That's why it's
decision-making
here.
process. Or shouldn't, should it? But Mrs. Yes, do you want to help point that out?
Having read the supporting statement with the application as well, there is discussion about meeting the English Cricket Board standards for nets. So there are certain standards for design that they have to meet in order to be used at certain levels. There was also one other point. There was a lot of talk about the requirement for 5 nets, and again, just in the supporting statement, there is a section where it talks about the Rushcliffe leisure strategy and playing pitch strategy, which does identify a demand within the West Bridgeford area, particularly for additional capacity. So I believe, reading the applicant statement, that the response of 5 lanes relates to a demand from the playing pitch strategy and leisure strategy. Thank you.
And are there any trees going to be planted to help deaden the noise for the people living nearby, since apparently they can't be put in the place where they are currently?
Yes, I think there could be a useful answer on this one, actually. So, Mr. Elias.
Thank you, Chair. Condition 3 of the recommendation requires a detailed landscaping scheme. That should also include landscaping that goes between the 2 fences, so that is closer to the properties which back onto the site, not for noise reasons, but for visual reasons and ecology. Thank you.
Indeed, it does. I'd missed that. Yes, condition 3 does make that point. Right, who is next? Councillor Wells, please.
Thank you, Chair. I understand why Rushcliffe needs the cricket pitches, but I'm concerned about the timing. 9 o'clock at night, I'm sorry, is too late, especially for the residents hearing that noise. So if you can make it 8 o'clock, I'll vote for it. If not, no.
My colleague is anxious to come in on this because I think he's going to offer some.
I wouldn't necessarily say anxious, but two penneth on it. I think it's possible to be conscious of the points that Councillor Wells makes, but also thinking about the potential users of the facility, particularly adult recreational players who would be likely to be utilising the facility after work, as a common time for a cricket club nets to take place. And I think it's also relevant to mention that it is true that there are seasonal and meteorological constraints on the use of this facility for those times. So I would be in the camp of permitting the use of the facility up till 9 o'clock on the occasions when that were either possible or desirable for the players.
Thank you. And I think as well, condition number 5 helps because there is this requirement for the noise management scheme, which includes further mitigation measures, including et cetera, before it comes into use. So that, I would think, provides some reassurance. Okay. Yes. Now, I see you've got your hand up. I'm not allowed to bring you back in, I'm afraid. The rules don't allow it. So sorry. Sorry about that. Right. Who else wants to come in on this one? Any others or? although we've got the recommendation is moved and seconded as per the report. We've discussed the conditions. I don't see any other members wishing to come in on this, so I think, right, we're going to make a decision, aren't we? So we've got the recommendation in front of us, moved and seconded. I think we've had a fair discussion, both of the positives and potential negatives. We better have a show of hands, please. Show of hands, those in favour of the application, please show your hands. Seven. Is there anyone against? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so 7 in favour and 4 against. So permission is granted. Okay, thank you. But I'd like to try and reassure the residents that the conditions, I think, are there. Right, the final item on the agenda is a noting item. It is for the appeals report, and there's one item on here which was 82 Copgrave Lane. Does anyone want to say anything about it, or any questions, or it is what it is? No? Okay, right, so that's the final item. Thank you for that. We'll bring them, it's coming up to 8:55, so we'll close the meeting at 8:55. Thank you for your time, input and patience. We've had, again, a interesting mix of applications tonight. That's one of the